What is going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Your Request. This is the segment on my channel where I review movies that you request for me to review. And this also coincides with another series I do on my channel called The Criterion Corner, because this film is in the Criterion Collection. And this is from one of the greatest living directors working right now, Bong Joon-ho. And this is one of the films in his catalog that I've been wanting to watch for quite some time now. And luckily, one of you out there said, Nate, I want you to watch this right now, which gives me an excuse to push everything else aside and watch it right away. And I'm a huge fan of Bong Joon-ho's work. I think so far in his catalog, I've seen Parasite, Mother, and Snowpiercer, and now Memories of Murder. And what impresses me so much about Bong as a director is the way he juggles tonality in his movies. He is able to create really somber, dour moments mixed in with really comedic, upbeat moments, and just kind of shift the tone in such a seamless way that for a lot of directors, it wouldn't work. It would come across as a complete and utter mess. And so I was really curious, with this film being about a series of murders being committed, what he would do with the tone that I'm so used to him bringing to his films. And I'm really excited to talk about this movie with you today. Memories of Murder is directed by Bong Joon-ho. During the late 1980s, two detectives in a South Korean province attempt to solve the nation's first series of rape and murder cases. So, I was really excited to watch this movie. I'm a huge fan of Bong Joon-ho's work. I just think that he is an incredible director, and this movie, simply put, is a masterpiece. I don't really have any other word for it. It is truly one of the most masterfully directed, acted, most brilliant pieces of film that I've ever watched in my life. I am a huge fan of David Fincher's Zodiac, and that is very much what this movie reminded me of. Another film that I think is pitch perfect. And this movie has everything in it that makes Bong Joon-ho such a special director. And I cannot wait to talk about this movie in detail with you today. So at the beginning of the film, we are introduced to Detective Park and Detective Cho. And Park is played by Sang-kyung, who so many people know from South Korean cinema. I have loved every movie that I've seen him in. He just truly steals the show. And we see these two, they come across this dead body, and they're starting to investigate this series of murders where women are being killed and their bodies are left in a very specific way, where they're tied up with their underwear and bras, and they've almost always been violated and they've been killed. And so they're trying to investigate this. Well, we learned to early on, these two detectives are buffoons. They do not handle the situation well. They are essentially doing everything the wrong way. They're early on, there's a young man in the community who he clearly has like a developmental disability, and they're trying to pin it on him almost just to get it over with, because he said that he mentioned that he saw something. And they try that a couple of times to just pin it on people, almost like, we're sick of dealing with this, let's just get it out of the way. And we see them kind of fumble over and over and over again early on in the movie. So after all of this time, we are eventually introduced to Detective Seo, who comes in, and he is very like clinical with his work. You can tell that he's very much about the details and about research. And at first he kind of just steps back and watches how these two detectives are approaching the situation, until he eventually gets fed up and says, we're going to do things my way. And the entirety of the film is watching these three guys, who are very different in their approach to work, try to solve this series of murder cases that's happening in Korea. So like I said, this movie is masterfully made, and that's for a multitude of reasons. I want to start, the three lead performances in this movie are exceptional. I talked about Sang-kyung. He's been in a ton of movies, just an incredible actor, but all three of those lead actors are phenomenal because they're so distinctly different. And what's amazing is the chemistry that they build through this like 2 hour and 10 minute runtime. The two main detectives that we're introduced to at the beginning of the movie, it's like I said, they're buffoons. They really handle situations poorly. We see early on, just like, they don't protect evidence. They don't do a good job making sure people aren't tampering with the crime scene. They really don't have anything under control. And we hear about people in the community getting upset with the way that they handle interrogations. They're very violent towards people. They're doing doing things the complete wrong way. And then we get this very detail-oriented minded detective that comes in, and we see him go by the book until he starts to kind of lose it a little bit and falls into similar trappings that those other detectives do. And what I love so much about it is it kind of showcases them as human beings and the flaws of these human beings. And I think because of the performances, it makes it so much more visceral as you're watching. Like all the emotional beats hit really hard. The cinematography, it's Bong Joon-ho. This thing is beautiful. There are some landscape shots in this movie that are just mesmerizing. The way I would describe this movie, honestly, is dreamlike. There are so many moments where I just felt mesmerized by what was going on screen. There's a movie that I talk about quite a bit on this channel, also in the Criterion collection, called Cure, that is another really fascinating crime drama. And there's a lot of parallels in the cinematography and the musical choices in moments in both of those movies, where it's almost like lulling you in and then showing you something incredibly disturbing after you feel pacified for a moment of time. And that's also cut with some of the really amazing comedic beats in this movie that come at the expense of how dumb the two lead characters are. I mean, you're getting a lot of comedy out of the fact that they so ineptly handle these situations and their emotional reactions rather than their logical reactions. And that's what makes the movie such a fascinating watch, parallel with that cinematography. And I love the musical choices in this movie. There's some truly like harrowing, suspenseful, dramatic musical cues, but there's also, like I said, a lot more passive and quiet ones. And there's also a piece of music in this movie that becomes such a pivotal, important role in everything that happens later on in the film. And I was so happy that they included something like that. And just the weird kind of things that this killer does to each and every victim that varied slightly. And it's really just a fascinating mystery. You find yourself trying to piece it together in your head as the film goes along. And what I really like is that Bong doesn't shy away from trying to build these characters up amidst like learning about this case and them trying to discover it. I really think Song Kang-ho's character is really the most fascinating character in this movie, and I really liked the development of his character, like what he's learning from Detective So as the film goes on. The two of them, like he sees how he operates, and at first he kind of just brushes it off, but then he almost has to come in to save the day in moments towards the end of the movie when he starts to act out, and he's like, man, just step back for a minute. We have to handle this the right way, because you never forget, despite the comedy and what's going on screen, the horror of what the reality of this situation is, which is young women being brutally raped and murdered in the most vile, horrible ways imaginable. And they're trying to stop it. And it's like these two guys, they want it to be over because it's taking forever, but they all realize like they've got to stop the guy so that this doesn't happen to more and more people. And like the defeat when they think they're getting there and someone else drops dead. And I think all of the emotional beats in this movie, if you put yourself in that situation, you'd feel that way. And I also love, like I said, in the United States of America, there are so many issues when it comes to the police in the United States of America and the way that they treat marginalized groups of people, the way there's evidence tampering, all of the things that we hear about that happen in the police force. And there is always corruption in the police force, and it exists. And I think the way Bong Joon-ho examines that in this movie through just little moments of like showcasing how they do things wrong, and like their chief getting frustrated but not really stepping in enough to make it end, and just all of these little things that just stack on top of it being a really incredible mystery, that it's that thought-provoking and kind of a dissection of the police in South Korea. And I really loved that about this movie a lot. And I think Bong always in his movies, there's a larger social commentary at play in every single one of his movies that exists. And I liked that element of this movie. I think I'm always fascinated with looking at social commentary that comes from other countries. And Bong is one of my favorites when it comes to that. Obviously, Parasite, one of the greatest movies made in the past like 20 years. And that's a phenomenal social commentary. And this was great. I really loved it a lot. I will find myself thinking about this movie quite a bit in the near future. It's just one of those I feel like is going to sear into my brain and that I can't wait to revisit in the years to come. So have you seen Memories of Murder? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was absolutely incredible. Bong Joon-ho just doesn't miss, in my opinion. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.